It wasn't the breakup that broke you. It was the contempt. He didn't just leave. He made a point of making you feel worthless, as if the years of love and dedication you poured into him meant absolutely nothing. It was a deep, calculated wound, a direct assault on your dignity that was designed to make you question your own value. You remember the look in his eyes. Not sadness, not regret, but a cold, dismissive cruelty. He made it clear that you were an inconvenience he was finally shedding. Your world didn't just fall apart because he was gone. It shattered because of the way he threw you away, like something disposable. That feeling, the sting of being utterly discarded by the person you gave everything to, is where this story truly begins. That wound was the seed of everything that was to come. There is a universal law that is as real as gravity. You reap what you sow. And the seeds of contempt he planted in you, that cold, calculated cruelty designed to make you feel worthless, did not just wither and die. They grew. But the harvest was his alone to bear. You started to see it. The weight of his actions began to physically change him. The arrogant mask he wore started to crack, revealing the haunted man underneath. Dark circles bloomed under his eyes from sleepless nights. His shoulders slumped, as if carrying a burden no one else could see. He looked like a man who had aged a decade, the light in his eyes extinguished and replaced by a constant gnawing shadow. He was a ghost in his own life. In a desperate search for peace, he walked into a church. He was looking for some divine absolution, a way to unload the guilt that was crushing him. But in that quiet, sacred space, his soul was too heavy. In front of everyone, his legs buckled. He collapsed to the floor, and in that moment of utter desperation, it wasn't God's name he screamed in a broken, agonizing cry. It was yours. It was a public confession that his salvation wasn't in heaven, but in the person he had so cruelly thrown away. And so, after hitting his absolute bottom, he came to you. He didn't come back for love. He came back out of a purely selfish need for relief. He saw you as his only path to forgiveness, the only one who could lift this curse. He begged, he pleaded, hoping you would be his cure. But he wasn't met by the broken person he left behind. He was met by you, standing in the quiet strength that comes only from healing your own wounds. You looked him in the eye, and with no malice, only unshakable resolve, you denied him. You made it clear that your peace was no longer his for the taking. You were not his salvation. His return was his problem to solve, not yours. Look, let's talk about what happened, about the choice he made. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a profound miscalculation of value. He looked at you, at the home you built together, at the years of loyalty and genuine support, and he saw it as something common, something replaceable. He convinced himself that the fleeting excitement he found with someone else was more valuable than the solid foundation you represented. He didn't trade you for another person. He traded gold for glitter. He chose the illusion of something new over the reality of something true. In his mind, he was upgrading, leaving behind what he saw as ordinary for something he believed was extraordinary. But what he failed to understand is that the strength he had, the light people saw in him, was a reflection of the peace and stability you provided. He didn't leave you. He left the best version of himself behind. That decision, that single arrogant act of trading unwavering love for a temporary thrill, was the moment he began to erase his own future. He threw away his anchor and was surprised when he found himself lost at sea. And then, the bill comes due. It always does. This isn't about magic or curses. It's about the simple, brutal physics of the soul. An act of profound cruelty creates a debt, and that debt has to be paid. He thought he had walked away clean, but he was carrying a weight he couldn't see, and soon, everyone else could. It started in his face. That arrogant smirk he wore like a shield began to falter. The confidence in his eyes was replaced by a hollow, vacant stare, the look of a man who is constantly looking over his shoulder but doesn't know what he's looking for. Dark, bruised-looking circles bloomed under his eyes, the kind that sleep doesn't fix because the exhaustion isn't physical, it's spiritual. His shoulders, which he once held back with such pride, began to slump forward as if he were carrying an invisible yoke. People noticed. Friends, colleagues, the people who once admired his supposed strength, they started talking. They'd whisper, "What happened to him? He looks terrible." He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a few months, the light inside him completely extinguished. He was a ghost haunting his own life, and his every interaction was a reminder that something vital had been severed.
he severed it himself. In a final, desperate act to quiet the noise in his head, he sought refuge in a place he hadn't been in years, a church. He was looking for a shortcut to peace, a divine pardon that would lift the crushing guilt. But you cannot ask for grace when your heart is full of poison. As he stood there, surrounded by silence and prayer, the weight became unbearable. In front of everyone, his legs simply gave out from under him.
He collapsed to the floor, not in quiet prayer, but in a raw, animalistic display of agony. And the name he screamed, the one that echoed off the sacred walls in a broken, desperate cry, wasn't God's. It was yours. It was a public confession, a humiliating admission that the heaven he had thrown away wasn't in the sky, but in the life he had with you. And so, when he finally stood at your door, he was a ghost of the man who had left. The arrogance was gone, stripped away layer by layer, until all that remained was a hollowed-out shell of desperation. He didn't look you in the eye with the cold contempt you remembered. He couldn't look you in the eye at all. His gaze was fixed on the ground, as if the weight of his own shame was physically pulling his head down. He was a ruin, and he had come to the one person he thought could rebuild him. His words were a torrent of self-pity. He spoke of his sleepless nights, of the gnawing emptiness in his chest, of how his life had become a living hell. He talked and talked, but you noticed something profound in his desperate monologue. He never once asked how you were. He didn't speak of the pain he caused you, except as a catalyst for his own suffering. His apology wasn't for you. It was a desperate attempt to medicate himself. He was confessing his sins not for absolution, but for relief. He looked at you not as the woman he had loved and destroyed, but as a key to his own prison cell. He was asking you to unlock the door for him. And in that moment, the last vestiges of the hold he had over you dissolved. You didn't feel anger or even pity. You felt clarity. You saw him for exactly what he was, a man who had burned down his own house and was now standing in the ashes, demanding that you hand him a glass of water. You let him finish. You let the silence hang in the air for a moment, and then you gave him your answer. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a storm. It was a quiet, unshakable truth. "The peace you are looking for," you said, your voice calm and even, "is not mine to give you. The forgiveness you want is something you have to find with yourself. What you did created a debt, but I am not the one you pay it back to. You have to live with it." You told him that you had found your own peace, that you had worked hard to rebuild your life from the rubble he had left behind, and that your home was now a sacred space, a space he was no longer welcome in. You were not his cure. You were not his redemption. You were a survivor, and your survival depended on keeping the source of the poison out. He looked up, finally, with a flash of disbelief in his eyes. He had come expecting a fight, or tears, or perhaps even a reluctant embrace. He had come expecting you to play a role in his drama of redemption. He never imagined that you would simply refuse to be in his movie at all. Your calm denial was a wall he couldn't break down, a truth he couldn't argue with. When you closed the door, it wasn't with a slam. It was a soft, definitive click. And on the other side of that door, you didn't collapse in tears. You stood in the silence of your own home, and for the first time, the silence felt complete. It was the sound of freedom, the sound of a chain finally breaking. He was left outside, alone with the consequences he had authored. And you were finally, completely, and irrevocably free. His story could continue, but you were no longer a character in it. You were the author of your own. So, what happens after the door is closed, after the final appeal is denied? He isn't just left outside in the cold. He is forced to live in the world he created, and the signs of that world are now written all over him. This is the quiet, grinding consequence that follows the dramatic collapse. First, look at his face. The arrogance is gone, completely eroded by a constant, low-grade anxiety. What's left is a permanent expression of exhaustion. It's not the look of someone who missed a night of sleep.
It's the profound weariness of a man at war with his own conscience. His eyes are dull and evasive, always looking down or away, as if he's afraid that anyone who looks too closely will see the ruin inside. The lines on his face aren't from age, they're from the constant strain of holding a mask in place, a mask that no longer fits. Then, watch his behavior. He's become a fugitive in his own life. He moves with a nervous, hurried energy, as if he's always late for something he doesn't want to attend. In social settings, he stays at the edges, avoiding deep conversations and laughing a little too loudly at things that aren't funny. He cannot stand silence, because in the quiet, the only voice he hears is the one that reminds him of what he lost. He is constantly fidgeting, checking his phone, doing anything to avoid being still. Stillness is where the truth lives, and that is the one place he can no longer go. And finally, consider the environment he chose. That new life he thought was so much better, it's a cold, sterile place. The glitter he chased has revealed itself to be just cheap plastic. The relationship he chose is transactional, built on convenience, not connection. There is no shared history, no deep well of trust to draw from. His home is quiet, but it isn't peaceful. It's the hollow silence of an empty museum. He has everything he thought he wanted, but he is desperately, profoundly alone within it.
He traded a life of substance for a life of surfaces, and now he's discovering that you can't build a fire on a polished floor. He is living the direct consequence of his choice, a beautiful, empty room with no warmth and no way out. And so we arrive at the final chapter, not his, but yours, because after you close that door, his story becomes a flat, predictable line, while yours begins to climb again. His future is not a tragedy in the dramatic sense. There is no lightning strike, no sudden ruin. The final point is quieter, colder, and far more permanent. It is the slow, grinding reality of a life lived in deficit. He will try to rebuild, of course. He will find another partner, maybe even build another home. But every relationship he enters from now on will be haunted by a ghost. Not the ghost of you, but the ghost of his own integrity. He cannot offer anyone the foundation of trust because he shattered his own. He will try to build a new life on a fractured foundation, and he will wonder why every wall he puts up has a crack in it, why every room feels cold. He'll look for warmth in others, not realizing he's the source of the chill. Years will pass. He will see you, perhaps from a distance, in a store or across a street. And in that moment, he won't see the woman he broke. He will see the life he could have had. He will see your peace, your quiet confidence, the light in your eyes that he himself extinguished, and you, through your own strength, reignited. And it will hit him, not like a storm, but like a silent, crushing weight. The undeniable truth that his best days were the ones he threw away. His punishment isn't to be miserable every single moment. That's not how life works. His punishment is to be just okay, to live a life that is permanently lukewarm. He will have moments of laughter, moments of distraction, but he will never again know the deep, bone-felt peace of a clear conscience. He will always be living with a low-grade hum of regret, a background noise in his own soul that never, ever turns off. He traded gold for glitter, and he is condemned to live in a house decorated with cheap plastic, always remembering the feeling of solid gold in his hands. And you? Your future is not about him. It's about the silence in your home that is no longer empty, but full of peace. It's about rediscovering the person you were before him and building someone even stronger. Your freedom is the final consequence, not because you escaped him, but because you reclaimed yourself. He is a closed chapter, a story you no longer read. His future is a long, flat road leading nowhere special. Yours is an open sky. He is a prisoner of his past, and you are finally the architect of your future. Let's be clear about what truly broke you. It wasn't the goodbye, it was the contempt. He didn't just leave, he made a point of shattering your sense of worth on his way out. That cold, dismissive look in his eyes wasn't sadness or regret. It was a calculated cruelty meant to make you feel like the years you invested were a burden he was finally, happily, shedding. Your world didn't just crumble because he was gone. It shattered because of the way he threw you away, like something disposable. That feeling, that sting of being utterly discarded,
is where this story truly begins. But there is a law as real as gravity. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The seeds of contempt he planted began to bear a harvest that was his and his alone to reap. Soon the consequences became visible to everyone. The arrogant mask he wore began to crack, revealing the haunted man underneath. Deep, dark circles bloomed under his eyes, the kind that sleep doesn't fix because the exhaustion is spiritual. His shoulders, once held back with pride, began to slump forward as if carrying an invisible yoke. He looked like a man who had aged a decade, the light in his eyes extinguished and replaced by a constant gnawing shadow. In a desperate search for relief, he walked into a church, looking for a divine shortcut to peace. But you cannot ask for grace when your soul is that heavy. There, in that quiet, sacred space, the weight became unbearable. In front of the entire congregation, his legs simply gave out from under him. He collapsed to the floor, and in a raw, agonizing cry that echoed off the walls, the name he screamed wasn't God's. It was yours. It was a humiliating, public confession that the salvation he was looking for wasn't in heaven, but in the person he had so cruelly cast aside. And so, after hitting that absolute bottom, he came to you. He didn't come back for love. He came back out of a purely selfish need for relief. He saw you as his only path to absolution, the only one who could lift this curse from his soul. He begged, he pleaded, hoping you would be the cure for the poison he had willingly drunk. But he wasn't met by the broken person he left behind. He was met by you, standing in the quiet strength that comes only from healing your own wounds. You looked him directly in the eye, and with no malice, only unshakable resolve, you denied him. You made it clear that your peace was no longer his for the taking. You were not his salvation. His return was a confession of his guilt, but you were no longer the answer to his prayers. And then, the moment will come. It won't be a dramatic confrontation at your door. It will be quieter, more insidious.
It will arrive as a vibration on your nightstand in the dead of night, a message from a number you thought you had deleted. You will see his name, and for a fraction of a second, an old ghost of a feeling will stir. But it's not panic, not pain. It's just the faint echo of a song you no longer listen to. You will open it. It will be a long, rambling block of text, sent in a moment of his weakness. He'll talk about his emptiness, the silence in his house, how every small success feels hollow because you're not there to share it. He will say he was a fool, that he destroyed the only real thing in his life. He won't ask you to take him back, not directly. He'll ask for something smaller, more dangerous, a conversation, just to hear your voice. He is trying to make his misery your problem one last time. And as you read those words, you will feel nothing, not anger, not pity, not even satisfaction. You will see his pain for what it is, a debt he owes to himself, a consequence he is trying to outsource. You will realize that the man who wrote this message is a stranger to you. The connection is not just broken, it has dissolved into dust. His suffering is no longer tied to your healing. You will look at his words, at this final, desperate attempt to anchor himself to you, and you will understand that the chain has been broken for a long time. He is just now noticing the slack. You will not type a reply. There are no words left to say. There is nothing to forgive because there is nothing to reconcile. Your peace is your own, and it is not available for negotiation. With a quiet, steady hand, you will hold your finger over his name. You will press block. Then you will press delete. The message will vanish. There is no sound, no fanfare, just a clean, empty space on your screen where his chaos used to be. You will put the phone down, turn off the light, and lie back in the quiet darkness of your room. The silence is absolute. It is the sound of a story that has finally, truly ended. I am free.